Hello Superset Maniacs and welcome back to my channel. Today we're finally gonna give Ronnie the biggest challenge ever, and that is Phil Heath with wide clavicles. We've challenged Ronnie on this channel with all kinds of comparisons. We compared him against the very best. We compared the one version of his with the contender having the advantage of using different versions for each pose. We compared him with off-season versions of other bodybuilders, and he always seems to come on top. Some people call me a Ronnie Coleman fanboy, but I don't agree for two simple reasons. My favorite bodybuilder is actually Phil Heath, and second reason for why he always wins any comparison is because he's actually the best bodybuilder of all time. But what if Phil Heath, one of the few guys that are good enough to even hope to challenge Big Ron, would get rid of his only major flaw in his physique, that being his narrow structure? My favorite Ronnie Coleman version is his 03 Mr. Olympia one, and I also believe that is his best version, but for this comparison I chose Ronnie's version that is considered by most fans as being the real best shape, his 1999 Olympia physique. So because I chose 2011 Phil Heath to get the clavicle improvement where his midsection looked the best in his entire career, it would have been unfair to choose a version for Ronnie where his midsection was not at its best, like in 2003. In 1999, Ronnie had the perfect balance between mass and aesthetics, so this is the right version that should go against 2011 Phil Heath with wide clavicles. So guys, fasten your seatbelts because we're going on a ride, and we start with the front double biceps pose. This is Phil before I edited him, and he already looks pretty good if you ask me. He had a very tight midsection in 2011, so his narrowness wouldn't get too exposed. It's not like Ronnie destroys Phil here, but he's got the advantage of being bigger overall, having the thinner skin creating a better conditioning illusion, and having the deeper cut quads. But Phil is winning the forearms, the midsection, and the calves. So I guess it all comes down to the biceps, and it's fitting because after all, we're talking about the front double biceps. Now, it depends what you prefer, pickier biceps like Ronnie's or longer biceps that connect so well with the forearms like Phil. Well, overall in bodybuilding, picky biceps draw the eyes more and they are more appreciated, so I believe Ronnie wins this aspect. And it stays to say that Ronnie wins this pose overall. But let's see how would the wide Phil Heath look in the front double biceps. Well, he looks damn impressive and he definitely has the better V-taper now. But does this change anything? I don't know. It's not like Ronnie does not have an impressive V-taper as well, and it's not like his midsection looks bad here, so taking into consideration everything in this pose, I still believe it all comes down to the biceps development, and Ronnie Coleman wins this aspect. So the first point goes to Ronnie Coleman in our comparison today. He wins the front double biceps pose. And we already got to the pose where Phil Heath needed to be wider the most, the front lat spread. This was Prime Phil's weakest pose by far, specifically because of his narrow structure. His chest would get squeezed when he executed the pose, and his dominant arms wouldn't help him at all, overshadowing the lats. This is not the best angle for Ronnie, but it's good enough to notice that he beats Phil Heath fair and square. He is wider, his lats are bigger, and the chest makes a big difference as well. So let's see if wide Phil can change anything, because Ronnie is winning this pose otherwise. Well, this is a different story than in the front double if you ask me. Phil really looks improved here. Being wider, his chest would get wider as well, his lats would get more exposed, and given the fact that his midsection remained untouched, his V-taper improved drastically. I don't know what you guys think, but I believe wide field Heath is winning the front lat spread, so the score becomes 1-1. Next pose is the side chest, and obviously I couldn't edit the side poses, it wouldn't make any difference anyway. I'm gonna be brief about this pose. Phil has the more dominant arm and shoulder, but Ronnie's got the fuller and more striated chest. He has the better details through the shoulders, and he also wins the side leg in my opinion. So Ronnie wins the side chest and makes the score 2-1 for him right now. Back double biceps, and this may be controversial, but narrow fill may be enough to not lose this pose. Let's see. First of all, I have to mention that Ronnie's shot is taken from below the stage, which makes his lower body bigger and upper body smaller. Keep that in mind. Second of all, he wins the biceps, as in this pose pickier biceps really make the difference. Downstairs, I still believe Phil has a small advantage at the calf department. Ronnie wins the glutes, and at the hams we can call it a tie. So I guess it all comes down to the actual back development. Ronnie has got the better details, the thinner skin, the lower lat insertions, but Phil's muscle bellies are unmatched. Overall, Ronnie probably wins this pose, but there can be an argument for Phil winning as well. Just check out these details I'm showing you right now. So let's check out wide Phil. Unfortunately, I don't think we can make a good idea here because of the camera angles and the way they are posing. Phil already looked wider than Ronnie here before I edited him wider, and we all know that isn't the case. I can't say that this helps Phil too much because it doesn't look natural. So wider Phil doesn't change the situation too much in this pose. I still believe there are strong arguments for him winning it, but overall I believe Ronnie Coleman takes it, so the score becomes 3-1 for Ronnie. Up next is the rear lat spread, and this is where things get fun again. Ronnie versus Phil in this pose is almost always about width versus details, as Ronnie is much wider, but Phil has got the craziest details in this pose. Maybe only Flex Lewis can come close to this. We already established in the last pose that lower body they are pretty much equal, with Ronnie having maybe a slight advantage. He is bigger indeed, but bigger is not always better. I think Phil is much better balanced, so once again it comes down to the actual back development. Enter wide Phil, and man oh man, Phil looks like a beast here. He already had the better details, the thicker lower lats and the better lower traps, while Ronnie was winning the upper traps and the lats, but now wide Phil Heath wins the lats as well, and it becomes pretty obvious that he's winning this pose. Phil Heath gets closer to Ronnie as the score becomes 3-2. Next is the side triceps, not too much to talk about here. This is the other side pose that I did not edit to make Phil wider. It's pretty much impossible and pointless. This is an easy win for Phil Heath. The score becomes 3-3 right now. And next is the abs and thighs pose. 1999 Ronnie's midsection was pretty tight, but his abs would spill out in an odd way. I think he executed this pose better in 03 when he had a much wider midsection, so it's about the execution mainly. The thing is that Ronnie is winning the quads, but upper body I think Phil already does enough to win this pose. The only argument against this is maybe Phil's bad V-taper. Wide Phil enters the chat, bad V-taper leaves the chat. I think now it's more than obvious that Phil Heath wins this pose. Ronnie's got the better quads indeed, but it's not like Phil has weak quads, so Overall, wide Phil wins this pose and makes the score 4-3 for him, going into the last pose. Which is the most muscular? Phil already made sure he's not losing this comparison, but maybe Ronnie can pull out a draw. Let's see. The most muscular is always interesting between these two. Phil is so arm dominant that he even overshadows Big Ron at this department in this pose. His shoulders are also better in my opinion, but once again, Ronnie brings out the wider frame and bigger chest, so it becomes again a choice between better arms and shoulders and better chest. Enter wide Phil Heath, and this becomes pretty obvious, at least from my perspective. There's nothing Ronnie Coleman can do about it now. Phil looks like Marcus Rule with better triceps, better conditioning and much better legs. Phil Heath, or rather wide Phil, wins this pose and wins the entire comparison against Ronnie Coleman with the score of 5-3. So yes, it took Photoshop to make Ronnie Coleman lose. Wide Phil Heath is just something else. But the real question is, would Phil Heath kept on that crazy roundness if he was wider? Because I believe one of the reasons he's got that crazy fullness is because of his muscles spread out on a smaller frame, so they get somehow squeezed and become fuller. But had Phil have been wider, the same amount of muscles had to spread on a larger frame, losing volume in the process. What do you guys think about this? Let me know in the comments below. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to support the channel, and as always, thank you guys and see you next time.